a long time, I was scared to share my true color, to be who I truly was. I was hiding in the story I was reading, fearful of what people would think about me. But this ends now. I have stopped running. I decide to accept my diversity. Today, I will share our story of neurodiversity and mental health awareness. Welcome on the ADHD Melly Show. Hello, everybody. I hope you're doing well today. I'm back from vacation. I'm here to do hard work and do this podcast with you guys. It's just a great way to quit my vacation and come back more active on LinkedIn and the social media, etc., and and I'm so glad because I'm going to be today with a fellow, somebody that has our own podcast too about neurodiversity. So we have the same goal in life. And we're going to talk to you a little bit more how you can just share your own story and be a little bit more public about it and make your own podcast because it's a great adventure and I'm doing this for more than a year now and I won't change it for nothing. And I'm so proud to be able to invite fellow podcaster with me today. So Caroline is here today and welcome her. Woo-hoo.
Hello everyone. Hi Melly, thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, welcome. First of all, I want to say that Caroline is one of the first that brought my t-shirt and I want to say thank you. Please show to everybody the t-shirt.
Okay. Oh, my visual background, but you can kind of see it from here. I think you can see the text. It looks like that. It's pink. There are different colors, but I liked the pink one.
So what do you like the most about the t-shirt?
I like a lot of things. I like the design. I know you said that you got bullied at one point for your handwriting, but I actually really like the writing and the t-shirt's really good quality. Like I like the supplier. I've bought from them before and it's like, because sometimes you buy t-shirts and they're not good, but this is really nice quality material and good sizing. So yeah, it's really great.
And having merch is a bit a part of having a podcast or being social and showing your story to everybody else. People want to help you succeed, so they buy merch from you, etc. So you can see below, you have the link to buy the t-shirt. Of course, it's going to be on the bio. You should be able to see that as well. And now we're going to start a little bit more. I want to know a little bit more about you and why did you decide to start a podcast?
Sure. So my name is Carolyn Kiel. I'm in the USA on the East Coast in New Jersey. And podcasting is not my full-time job. I've done other things, but currently I work in employee training at a big company over in this area. And I started podcasting about 4.5 years ago. I wanted a creative outlet. So I had learned about podcasting maybe a few months before I started one, like what a podcast even was. And, I used to be a singer. I still sing from time to time. So I knew a little bit about like microphones and recording. So I said, well, it might be cool. I wasn't singing at that time, but maybe I could do a podcast and I could talk to my friends and hear about all the interesting things that they're doing. And that's really how it started. I have an interview show. So, much like your live stream that you do. So I just started out with people who I knew to figure out how to do the show and really went from there. And the focus on neurodiversity came much later. I was at first just interviewing people that I knew about, who started their own businesses or had interesting projects that they liked. And then I switched to focus more on neurodiversity at the beginning of this year.
Great. So what is your own story about neurodiversity?
So for me, I wound up finding out that I'm autistic at the end of last year, like the fall of last year. I'm in my mid 40s, so growing up, we learned very different things about what autism was. So it's almost like just take whatever I learned in the 1980s, 1990s and throw it out because so much of that is just, not applicable to so many, many, many different people. But I started talking with people in the actually autistic community and I interviewed a couple of people on my show. I was on the online platforms, just hearing about people's experiences and finding a lot of things in common with that. So I pursued it and just wanted to, kind of compared it to my own childhood experiences and my current experiences of life, and wound up finding out that yeah, I'm also autistic as well. So and then I just wanted to hear more stories because it's
Mhm.
I always feel so different growing up, but now with the internet you can connect with almost anyone. So that's my favorite part, is just hearing people's stories about what it was like growing up and what it's like now, what they like to do.
You know that when you have autistic, you know yourself because you're autistic that you have some difficulty with social skills. So how can you make a podcast which is so public and still be confident?
Well, it's interesting. There's different ways of sort of presenting yourself in social situations that I feel like are all different from each other. So I've been a singer for most of my life, so I've been a performer. So I don't say that I'm super comfortable. Like, I still get nervous if I have to go on stage and sing or even speak, but I enjoy it, and I feel like I have enough of a talent for it that and I prepare a lot, so it helps me to be on there to not be so nervous that I can't do it. And one-on-one conversations, you know, honestly, Melly, I wasn't sure if I could do one-on-one interviews because conversations are tough. I didn't know if I could lead a
Mhm.
conversation, and especially with someone I didn't know that well. But I found, again, if you can prepare a lot ahead of time. So a lot of autistic people will do that as kind of a hack, to so to say, in a social situation. If you're going to somewhere, you think about, okay, what types of things could I talk about? Who's, maybe even like, who's going to be there, and who do I want to meet, and what are my sort of mini goals for whatever the social situation is. So for me, preparation and just really trying to listen to people as they're talking, which sounds simple, but it's difficult sometimes because you have your own thoughts in your head. So but it's been fun. I've had great conversations with people.
How do you feel being a guest today?
It's
What
I'm
is the
not
change?
It is a change. I'm not as used to that. So sometimes it's a little, you know, I don't have as much control over the question leading. So I'm like, what's coming? But it's fun. I'm trying to do more and more of that because I really am trying to get out of my comfort zone, and I do want to talk about, I like to share my show with other people outside
Mhm.
of my immediate audience. So I appreciate the opportunity.
You're welcome. So now I'm going to let you talk a little bit more about your show.
Mhm.
You can name your show,
Mhm.
tell me where you can find it, etc., etc. So this is your spotlight. So talk to me a little bit more what it is.
Sure. So the name of the podcast is called Beyond 6 Seconds. And I got that title from, I think it was some career study that was done by one of those career sites about, recruiting and your resume. And this finding said that it takes about 6 seconds for a recruiter to like look at your resume and make a judgment call about, like, all right, I'm putting this in like the go pile or like pushing it aside. And again, I don't know how true that is really, but it was a cool title, a cool thing. I'm like, oh, okay, because that's what I wanted to do with my show, is get beyond those kind of quick first impressions. Um, it's for and really have people talk who maybe don't have that super polished elevator speech about themselves, and because sometimes our stories aren't so neat and tidied up with a little bow, and I like kind of getting into those more complicated stories. So yeah, so the show is called Beyond 6 Seconds, and since the beginning of this year I've been interviewing neurodivergent guests. It's important for me. I'm very interested in hearing directly from people who are neurodivergent themselves, and from
Mhm.
a variety of different backgrounds as well. So, different, ethnicities and races and genders and, economic backgrounds and everything like that. So, again, it's just started since this year, but that's my ultimate goal because, neurodiversity intersects with so many other of our identities as well, that there's so many different experiences
Mhm.
of neurodivergence. So so far I've talked to several guests who are autistic, also some with ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, Tourette's syndrome. I have an episode coming up with someone who has auditory processing disorder, and I'm just expanding from there. There are so many different neurotypes to learn more about. So that's what I've been doing. And I do have a website. I'll repeat it a few times, but here it's at beyond6seconds.net. and it's the number 6. But it's also on, if you look on any podcast player that you have, just search for Beyond 6 Seconds. You'll find it there as well.
She's very active on Instagram, so go
Mm,
ahead, find her. I'm going to put, like I said, the link in the bio so you can
thank
be
you.
able to check it out, because we are here to support each other. Because podcasting in the neurodivergent community is not like a battle between podcasts. It's more everybody showing their experience in a different way.
Yeah, I think there's plenty of room for all of us. Like, there's so many stories that really deserve to be told, and no one or two people can tell them all. So the more, the merrier.
So you didn't tell me when you post your
Oh,
episode. Do you have a special time, date, day of the week?
hmm
When is
I
that?
I typically post on Mondays in the morning. At least on the East Coast, it's pretty early in the morning, like around 6 a.m. I have it set up so that it goes, and I usually do every other week for a podcast episode, because there were times where I would do every week. Like during April, it was
Hmm.
Autism Acceptance Month, so I did podcasts every week. But it's, as you know, it's a lot of work to do all the, the editing and the posting and everything like that. So every other week works for me. So that's usually what I do with that. But I also have a newsletter that tells you when they're coming out if you don't necessarily want to like wait and look for them and wonder. So I give my newsletter subscribers early access. So that's on the website as well, if you want to check that out.
For me, it's so easy because we're recording and I'm not going to touch anything. So it's going to be
Mm.
so easy to just post it on audio, and that's on YouTube as well on LinkedIn. So that's, for me, it was easier to put it on different platforms. So for you, it's
Mhm.
only audio, if I heard it right.
I do have audio. I also have a YouTube channel, because I record on Zoom. It records
Mm-hmm.
the audio and the video. So I said, I have the video too. I don't edit I'm not as good with like video editing. So the audio is really where it is. But if you'd rather be on YouTube and watch me talk to somebody else, if that, watch the subtitles go by, you can definitely check out my YouTube. And I should say that almost all of my podcast episodes, certainly all of the ones within the last 2 or 2.5 years, have transcripts. So, if audio listening isn't your
Mm-hmm.
thing, you can go and read the transcripts. So I try to make it as accessible as possible.
So yeah, let's talk about accessible, because we're neurodivergent, so we're more aware about accessibility, right?
Hmm.
And what you told me that you put the transcript and subtitles on YouTube channel, but what is the best thing that you could do to make your podcast accessible? This, if we forget those two things.
Oh, wow. Besides transcripts, just, yeah, transcripts is a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Best way to make it accessible. Well, I don't know if this is an accessibility thing, but I try to repurpose my content a lot, because my episodes tend to be about anywhere between like 30 or 40 minutes, which is kind of long for,
Mm-hmm.
in some ways. So not everybody, has the interest or attention span or time to listen to something that's, 45 minutes long. But I do kind of separate out key points in like graphics, which I share on Instagram and Twitter, or little audio, like tiny audio clips that have subtitles. So like minute long audio clips, like an interesting thing from the episode. So I'll kind of share things like that. And yeah, the transcripts I think are big. I know they do take time, but there's a really good tool that I like to use called, I think it's pronounced Descript.
Mm-hmm.
That it's a video editor, but what I really like about it is that I can easily edit my video, and from the same file I can get the cleaned up transcript, like, because while I'm editing, I'm fixing words and stuff. I can get the transcript exported, and I can get the corrected YouTube subtitles exported. Because YouTube, when they do the automated subtitles,
Mm-hmm.
it's not always, it doesn't always work
Perfect.
so well. But at least it's like, okay, I write this up once and then I can export it everywhere. And so that is one thing I really like to do. And it helps with searchability too as well, if you got the words on your website.
Hmm. Christina said, accessibility in education is really important. I wish teacher could have more training in this. What do you have to say about that?
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I agree. As someone, I work in learning design as my main role. So a big thing is really understanding accessibility. And it's a lot of people just think like, oh, well, we'll make like a text-based version of this online training course, for example, so that it can be read by like braille machines and other screen readers and things like that. And that is a point of accessibility, but it's more than that. Another important thing I'll put a plug in for accessibility is adding alt text to any images that you have.
Hmm.
It's something that I've had to get used to, especially on Twitter makes it easy, but the thing with Twitter is if you post it, you can't edit it. So it's like,
Yeah.
I posted this thing and I forgot to put the alt text, but now it's now part of my habits to say anytime I'm posting an image, it's like, all right, I can go into the alt text and I'll at least write something descriptive that, you don't have to describe it in great detail, but just
Yeah.
mentioning, what's the important parts about this image that someone needs to know if they, for whatever reason, can't view the image. So that's another big one as well. So it expands from, transcripts to even the colors you use on, it's maybe not an audio so much, but anytime I'm sharing certain colors that people who are low vision or colorblind, certain color combinations work better, certain patterning, and there's websites that can instruct you on what the best contrast colors are. But those are just a few ways.
Hmm. I'm a website designer as well. I do
Mhm,
website in my free time. Actually, I'm trying to find more contract in that. So if anyone is watching
mhm,
and need help with their website, I'm your girl.
mhm.
But yeah, this is one of the things that I say to my client. You absolutely need to put to describe what your image are. And I admit at first I was not the best myself because it takes time. You need
It does.
to get used to it. And sometimes you simply forget because you're like in a rush and you just had this image because you need to add this image for some reason.
Mhm.
And yeah, and it's not only in if they're visually impaired, it's very important for them to understand at least the importance of what it is. If it's
Yeah,
important for us to see it, it's because it's important for them to understand what is on it.
exactly. Hmm.
So I have another question for you. What changed when you knew your diagnosis versus without knowledge?
Hmm. It's less than a year since then, so it's technically still pretty early, and there's a lot that I'm still processing and thinking about what would change. I think the first thing is really just being more um, like gentle and empathetic with myself, like looking back on your life and thinking about, a lot of things that happened or a lot of the labels you were given that it's like, oh, well, that a lot of that really wasn't my fault, or some of that was just completely misunderstood and
Hmm.
misconstrued. And, it's, I don't want it to sound like it's like I'm going to blame autism for like all my weaknesses. That's
Yeah.
not what it's about, but it puts it in a context of like, oh,
Hmm.
okay, well, this is something, of course I struggled with XYZ, and it doesn't make me a bad person or a weak person. It's just different. And there's different ways to approach um, these types of situations, like social situations or the need for routine or things like that. So that was the first thing that I really started um, resonating with.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I'm so glad that there's fellow people talking about neurodiversity and inviting people because at the same time we invite each other.
Mhm.
So most of the time when I invite somebody that has a podcast, I get invited in return. It's just like getting visibility to everybody because for me it's very important that people know about neurodiversity because you said that you have a job.
Mhm.
And when you're neurodivergent, you have a lot of difficulty sometimes to find a position that is fits for you and they will accept the need that you have to
Yeah.
succeed. But how was your experience in the workplace? Do you think that autism affects some of your affect a little bit more
Mhm.
how you present yourself at work?
Yeah, I mean, most of my career has been with me not realizing that I'm
Hmm.
autistic. So, and I have and again, this is where like intersections of other identities come in as well. So I was just raised in a family where it was expected that I would go on to at least college, and I had a relatively supportive school system. I was
Mhm.
also in the gifted program at the time, so that was kind of my quote unquote identity as a young student. And I was lucky in school because I also enjoyed music back then. I mentioned I'm a
Mhm.
singer. I used to play like the saxophone, so I was very involved in like band and chorus and different music competitions. So I kind of found my crowd to fall in with, which I know sometimes is a struggle for autistic kids. If somebody's feeling different, but sometimes the music and the theater crowd, like they're all little, not necessarily all mainstream themselves, and they're really cool people. So if I happened to fall in with that crowd, so that was really fortunate for me. And then my grades were good. I struggled a bit to figure out what I wanted to do with my life.
Mhm.
I'm still not sure I know exactly what I want to do when I grow up, but I really do enjoy where I am. Um, I think the thing that really surprised me, the biggest change for me, was I did really well in the structure of school,
Mhm.
where it's like, all right, these are the expectations, and you're being graded on something that's kind of objective. I mean,
Mhm.
it's not exactly, but there's some sort of concrete goal you're supposed to reach and things you're supposed to do. If you do this, you will get that. Like,
Mhm.
do this assignment, you will get this thing. But then you get to the working place, and it's like all those rules go out the door. It's like, how do you learn like what these rules are, unless you have people around you who have worked in, say, like a corporate setting, if you're going into the corporate world, because otherwise you just sort of get dropped in there, and it's like, oh, like it's not about, you get your performance review, but it's not about getting grades or like doing everything perfectly or always knowing the answer. It's about building relationships and knowing how to talk to people who are like several levels above you, and how to talk to your peers and what to talk about and what not to talk about, and how to ask for things without, there's so much. I found, like, work situations, because, and it differs by each company. Every company has
Mhm.
slightly different rules, and no one sits you down and tells you what they are. You just sort of bump around in them. So that, I think, was always a bit of a challenge for me. And again, if you have like really good supportive managers or supportive colleagues who are open-minded, that helps a lot, even as you're trying to figure things out. But yeah, every place is different. So that was the toughest thing for me, I think, just trying to figure that out.
But I'm happy that you succeed in your career. You seem to be happy where you are now. And do they know about your autism? Did you tell the people? How did they react? And how was it for you to be open about it?
So it's interesting. I am more open about it, like on Instagram and Twitter. So a lot of my close friends know. I've talked about it with them, and their response has been great. I mean, I'm really happily surprised with even how educated relatively people are about neurodiversity in
Mhm.
general. And because you never know, like, I don't know if everybody is like as like interested and obsessed about the concept as I've been. I've been studying it now for the past year, but it's great. It's like, oh yeah, I understand that, and they're supportive, and I think probably some of them might be neurodivergent themselves, because we tend to find each other
Mhm.
even before we know. So that's been a lot of fun, and it's just been nice to be able to talk openly about it. So at work, like, a handful of people know, but honestly, I'm not really like visibly out about being autistic at work. So obviously, if any of my coworkers have joined the live stream or are listening to the replay, like, surprise, you'll find out. But you'll notice on LinkedIn, I post about my podcast episodes like all the time, but
Mhm.
I don't make it as, I'm not as forward about talking about being autistic. Like, obviously, if someone listens to the show, they'll figure it out in like 5
Yeah.
minutes if they actually click on the link. But if someone's kind of scrolling by, they may not notice. So yeah, it's still kind of a process. I do think about it, and to be honest, I do have some concerns about being very openly, autistic at work, because it's new for me, and it's like I've spent I've spent so much time trying to build a career and I'm in a place where I'm really happy. It's like, I work with a bunch of really great supportive people, but there's always that fear of like, how are people going to
Hmm.
react? So, um, at this point, it's worked out. I'm well supported. Um, I have my support needs met. So, I'm kind of slowly sharing that with people.
I'm a bit sad for you that you don't feel comfortable to share it to your colleague, because that means that I'm right, that inclusivity in work is not there and is so lacking, and they support you for being you, but they don't know what you really need to succeed, and that's wrong a little bit. But I understand that feel of being judged, that fear of not being able to be that the people that are going to look you differently. I feel for that, and I'm so sorry that you're a little bit scared of sharing.
Yeah, well, it's still early, but that brings an interesting point is that with a lot of neurodivergent conditions, people who are my age, like, the Gen Xers, even like the older millennials, um, may, like me, may be autistic, may have ADHD, may be dyspraxic and not know it. So you have this issue of, okay, it's one thing to know that
Mhm.
you're autistic or have ADHD and to figure out, okay, and I'm comfortable telling people, and these are the things I need in the workplace or wherever I am
Mhm.
to succeed. But a lot of people are there and they don't know why they're struggling, and they don't know what supports they need or what they're allowed to ask for, or like sometimes we literally don't know like what would help us or even what the options are. Like, oh, is it an option to get like dimmer lights or to work? Well, now more of us work from home, but even a few years ago,
Mhm.
working from was like a big deal, like a huge accommodation, which is sounds so silly coming from
Yeah.
these days. But yeah, so it is important, even if people are not forthcoming or if they literally don't know that they're neurodivergent, it's still important for workplaces to, it's almost like accommodate them without realizing without having that conversation. So I think just being flexible with everyone, and not just having like one way to
Mhm.
do the work, just it helps everyone. Because yeah, there's a lot of people out there who are not diagnosed or not self-discovered about their neurodiversity.
I'm so happy that working from home is an option now, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I work
Because
from home a lot.
yeah, and that's amazing because you don't need to worry about what your colleague is going to think of you. You just do your
Yeah.
work and you're in silent, and you can just you take a small break when you need it,
Yeah.
and not being judged because nobody sees you doing it. The important is you to do your job, not how you do it. In my opinion.
Yeah. And especially with like the popularity, like right as you probably remember, like maybe right before the pandemic, it was all
Mhm.
about like open office environments, which is, I think, for a lot of neurodivergent people and probably
It's an
neurotypical people too, is like, whoa, because you're literally out there exposed. And I would have people like, because I get very focused. I don't know about you, Melly, but I have that
yeah.
power of like, I'm working on something and I'm like totally in the zone, and people would like try to get my attention. They would like come up behind me. They would like wave their hands in front of my face. I was like, and it just like so jarring. Like,
Mhm.
so at home I don't have to deal with that.
Yeah, it's a nightmare for me thinking about open space. It's like the
Yeah.
worst idea anyone could have,
Yeah.
I
I,
think.
I guess some people like it, but
Hmm.
it's difficult. It's a difficult adjustment.
Yeah, because they want you to be with working team, etc., etc. Yes, it's good for that, but not everybody is good with
Mhm.
always being a team. I'm good with the team when sometime, not all the time.
Yeah.
And and I'm the kind of person that is going to talk with her teammate all day long and not doing her work. So
Yeah.
that's the problem as well.
Yeah. It's like, well, I'm in the office, I get to see people, and now I don't see them that often because I don't
Uh-huh.
go in as often as I used to. So, yeah, of course I'm talking with people like half the day. But I guess there's value in that too if they're your coworkers. Again, it's all like building relationships,
Yeah.
even if it's not strictly work related, is like a huge part of work. Took me a while to learn that, but yeah. Hmm.
So if we come back to how to start your podcast,
Yeah.
so for me, the most important is to have a computer that's going to be able to stream, because if you don't have that, you're going to have blue screen. That happened to me at my beginning, and I was
Um,
not. I was sometimes I was live and it just stopped, and my guest needed to entertain the people while I was trying to come back. It was
mhm.
horrible. So before
Yeah.
having anything else, I have a computer that can support live stream. Is going to help you immensely, and after that it's going to have a microphone and a camera. Of
Yeah.
course, if you don't have the best, for now is okay, but for me, having a okay image, like I have a new camera now for a couple of months, and I'm just super excited about that. But if I had the choice between a camera and a microphone, I will say microphone, because if you want to put it in podcast
Mhm.
form, you want to have clear sound, you want to be able to be heard properly, because you just want to give as much quality that you can with a small budget. So for
Yeah.
you, what's your must?
Must, yeah, let's see, focusing on audio, definitely agree, a laptop. I don't do live streaming. I think it's amazing that you do the live streaming. I've done, like, Instagram lives. I think I did a Twitter space once, and that's like a very different skill set, and it's I'm amazed at people who can just go on it and do that off the cuff. So like, as you probably picked up, I'm very, like, I'm kind of prepared. I like to be able to, like, have my audio and then, like, go back and edit things, which is very time consuming. It's a choice. But for the podcast, yeah, definitely a microphone. If you're just doing audio only and not video, sometimes it helps to have what's called a pop filter, which is,
Hmm.
you've probably seen them. They're like those
I
round,
have
and they have,
one.
like, yeah, like the black mesh. They're really inexpensive, and you can put it in front of the mic, and it helps kind of dissipate, like, the consonant sounds, so that it doesn't
Hmm.
you're not, like, popping
Yeah.
literally on your mic. So I found that really helpful. At one point I had, like, a big, like, microphone arm that kind of held the mic, like, about here, which was kind of cool when I was doing audio only. I changed my setup a little bit when I started doing YouTube. Um, and then some sort of software to run on your laptop that records. So um, I mainly, so I record on Zoom. Um, I've been doing that for years. But there are other podcast platforms that
Yeah.
record audio. You know, Zoom I like because it's very easy for people to use and people
Hmm.
understand it, and it doesn't have a lot of hardware requirements for your guests and things. So I tend
Hmm.
to find there are very few technical problems with it. But there are other more robust um, platforms like StreamYard and Riverside, and that are newer, that
Hmm.
I think you get. They're I find them a little bit tougher to use, but the sound quality is maybe a little bit better. So it's really your preference if you're starting out to just sort of look into the different platforms and which one you're the most comfortable using. But there's a lot of different options.
And it's okay if you want to change and
Mhm.
to find your best one if you're not right. For me, I use Restream since almost the beginning,
Mhm.
and for me it's easier because I could put some overlays. I'm a graphic designer, like I said, so I like to make it a little bit more pretty, as it's on YouTube and on LinkedIn as well live. I wanted to make it a little bit more fun. I can add
Mhm.
the comments of the people that write me on the overlay, which for me is very
Wow.
cool to have, so I can easily see the comments of the people like you see on the screen.
Yeah.
So for me it's important to be able tell to show them that I see what they say, and that I'm just talking to them at the same time and
Mhm.
answering their questions. So for me, as I'm in live, you're not, I am. For me,
Mhm.
it's very important to have this interaction with my viewers.
That's great.
And you can put it on a lot of platforms as well. Restream is like my favorite.
Yeah.
And like I said, but it's very expensive.
Mm. Mhm.
So yeah, so that's what I would suggest. So we're almost at the end, and like I always do to all my guests, I give
Mhm.
you the last couple of minutes to talk a little bit more about what do you want to talk more, etc. If I haven't asked you any question, but you want to tell the public something, you can go ahead and tell anyone anything that you want right
Oh, wow. How do I limit it down? So, yeah, I would say that if you are thinking about starting a podcast and you have, especially if you have an idea, like something like a cool idea or something you want to try, the thing with podcasting or live streaming or YouTubing or any kind of content creation is that, you know, you as you've heard here, you can get a couple of things together and try it out, and you can change your show over time. Like mine changed from just sort of general focus and started on neurodiversity. You don't have to stick with the same setup or platform or topics that you start out with, and that's kind of the nice thing, is that you really can kind of experiment with ideas, see what resonates and see what people like, see, get people's comments. So, if you're thinking about it and you're kind of stuck about like, I don't know if this is going to work,
now.
like, just try it. It doesn't matter if you don't know if it's going to work. It might, or it might just be fun, or you'll probably learn some other things along the way. And yeah, and if you are interested in hearing more stories about neurodivergent people as told by neurodivergent people, yeah, please check out my podcast again. The website is beyond6seconds.net, and that's the number 6. Or you can search Beyond 6 Seconds on your favorite podcast player, your favorite podcast app. It's there as well. And yeah, the website has all my social media links, my newsletter links, other cool things like that. And yeah, I'm excited. My next episode that's coming out on Monday is with Quincy Hansen. He's a young autistic advocate, and he just published a book. And I'm also doing a giveaway for that book that's starting early next week. So yeah, if you're
Great.
listening to this now and that hasn't happened yet, I think it's the week of, what time is this? Like the 8th or 9th. Yeah, 8th and 9th, August 8th and 9th. Yeah, check back on my socials, and yeah, you might be able to even win a free book and while you're learning about neurodiversity. So excited about that one.
That would be awesome. So I have another question, because you talk a little bit more about your show. What's
Mhm.
the future of your show? What do you expect from it?
Ooh. Me, I don't know. I'm really just enjoying the experience, and I learned so much about neurodiversity talking with people. So I kind of started with the general concept of neurodiversity. Is most people think of like autism and ADHD, or sort of like the
Mm-hmm.
first one that comes to people's mind. But then there's like the learning differences like dyspraxia, dyslexia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, and then we've got Tourette syndrome, and then you've kind of got like, if you expand the universe, we've got like Down syndrome and other processing disorders and traumatic brain injuries, like all these differences of that impact who we are and how we process information
Mm-hmm.
and react to stimuli in the environment. I really want to talk to people who have like other broader conditions beyond sort of the core neurodiversity. And I just find it fun. I think it's just a great way to educate people. That's not, it's not like a super educational show. It's not going there to like get some degree in neurodiversity. It's fun, and it's not, it's somewhere to go. It's a safe space for listeners to go if they really don't know much, or want to have their minds opened. It's very open and accepting. People are very open about their experiences, and it's kind of a safe and comfortable space to learn. So yeah, I would say that's what I'm excited for about the show, is just interviewing more people with a variety of different neurotypes, even more than I've interviewed so far, and just to help to educate people about how diverse neurodiversity really is. There's no one stereotype that works for any neurotype, really. So it's just very robust and diverse community. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, and for me, I learned a lot about others, and it makes me feel confident. I learn more about English too, because Carl wants to know if you interview people out of the U.S., because if I'm not mistaken, is I think he's from the UK. I've interviewed Carl. He has palsy, and yeah.
Yeah, I do. It's interesting because a lot of neurodiversity advocates seem to be based in the UK, which is like a lot of the autism advocates, autistic advocates, which is actually kind of interesting. I'm like, oh, I guess there's like a really robust conversation going on over there about neurodiversity. So yeah, I have interviewed people from the UK. And even before I switched to neurodiversity, I talked to people all around the world, like people in Asia, people who were in South America. So yeah, as long as it works out with the time zones, we can make it happen. So yeah.
Yeah, I had people from Australia.
Yep.
She stayed awake until 1 a.m. to talk to me. No joke.
Wow.
Yeah, the guest had last week. She did that, and I was like super excited, and it was amazing. And yes, if you want some, I guess like Carl, yes, cerebral palsy, and it's very interesting his story, so you can check him out as
Very cool.
well. I like
Awesome.
to talk about my guests and people that are following me because it's very important, because if nobody was following me, it will be hard for me to just doing a podcast. It will be boring, if
Yes,
nobody
yeah.
was writing.
Sometimes you just feel like you're talking to yourself, but it's really nice when people write back and they're like, "Oh, I like that."
Yeah. And before we leave, I wanted to tell you to everybody that I have my event September 12th, the Neurodiversity Awareness event. And I really want to invite you. It's going to be live streamed with subtitle in French and English. It's going to be also in replay. You can come in Montreal if you want to. Why not? If you want to come to Montreal, I'll be so happy to meet you. And so yeah, you can check it out and get your virtual ticket or physical ticket. Go ahead, it's going to help me just succeed the ADHD show, because all process is going on the show as well. And I hope one day to be able to make those events all around the world as well. I hope to make one in the US, and it may happen because I may have a collab for next year. So I'm just telling you that right now. And yeah, so thank you again, everybody, for being here. I'm so, so, so glad to have you, Caroline, here. I'm just so glad. So see you next week, everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you.